Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Humans in Space Challenge briefing session, co-hosted by Boryang Axiom Space and Aurelia Institute. My name is Betty, and I'm an investment manager here at Boryang. Together, I'm here with my colleagues Hannah and David to share with you all about Humans in Space Challenge today. So for today's agenda, we'll be sharing with you all about Humans in Space Challenge, starting with what Humans in Space is, followed by the benefits offered to the applicants. We'll also go over the challenge topics together with our special speakers from Aurelia Institute, Axiom Space, and one of our challenge evaluators. We'll also guide you through the application process and the timeline, and there's going to be a live Q&A session at the end of the session. So please feel free to send us your questions throughout the chat box function. And your question will only be visible to the panelists, so please feel free to send them away. Okay, before we start, today we have a number of special speakers from our co-hosts and challenge evaluators, starting with Ariel Ekblaw, the founder and CEO of Aurelia Institute and the director of MIT Space Exploration Initiative, will discuss how the space exploration topics unlocked ideas in healthcare and lifestyle technology that allow for long-term habitation in space. And we have Dr. Lucie Low from Axiom Space. She's the chief scientist of microgravity research at Axiom Space, and she will lead the space utilization topics to discuss the benefits of low Earth orbit for life science experiments and how solutions in space can impact life on Earth. Last but not the least, we have Dr. Mathias Basner. He's one of our challenge evaluators who's a psychiatry professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He has also just sent an experiment through the AX2 mission, and he will share about his experiment in space as an example case of our research topic. So now moving on to sharing with you about Humans in Space. So Humans in Space is actually the second annual Care in Space initiative. Last year, we hosted the inaugural CIS Challenge, where we called for startups supporting astronauts' healthcare in space. All the finalists had the chance to pitch their ideas and receive questions from renowned space healthcare figures from NASA HRP, Frisch, Harvard, MIT, and Stanford. And the 6 final awardees were awarded with an investment of $100,000, access to space-tailored accelerator program, and the opportunity to interact with international investors and corporates at the Grand Demo Day. So if you see the picture here, these are the actual photos taken from our demo day under the iconic Space Shuttle Endeavour. And it was really exciting to see and be able to interact with innovative space and healthcare ideas and investors engaging with enthusiasts. But so your question would be, how about this year? So for this year, we are actually going bigger. A bigger vision. From Care in Space Challenge that only focused on healthcare topics, Humans in Space Challenge will go beyond healthcare to cover space lifestyle and even space platform topics. So we'll be sure to share more about the topics later on. But moving on, we're also going bigger on the applicant pool. So last year, we invited only the startups to apply for the challenge. But this year, we're accepting applications from both startups and researchers who are daring to shape the future of humanity in space. The third point would be we are also going bigger on ecosystem. As you can see, these are all the partners and experts we are working with for this year's challenge. And these are also the ones that you'll be able to interact with once you enter the challenge. You will get the chance to interact and be evaluated by distinguished judges who has led space projects of NASA and other international space agencies, and those who have been recognized by the government for their contribution in space experiments. You will also get the chance to interact with and network with leading investors and corporates within the space industry. Plus, for the finalist of the challenge, you will get the chance to be mentored by these leading figures. So I hope you don't miss the chance to expand your network of collaborators, mentors, and investors through the challenge and the grand Humans in Space Symposium that will happen at the end of October. And we're also going bigger on the awards. So up to 10 startup awardees will be provided with $100,000 of equity investments. And for the researchers, up to 7 research awardees will be given $30,000 of research prize. Plus, for eligible startup awardees, you will even get the chance to send your experiments in Axiom's future space mission through the 500,000 startup credit program. And that's not the end. There are more benefits waiting. We have $15,000 of AWS credit, and there's also government grant consulting service at a special offer provided by our partner FreeMind Investment. And you're also provided, selected startups and researchers will be provided with a fast-track access to premier accelerator programs in the US, Europe, and Israel. So please and there are other benefits that are offered, so please feel free to check out our website to know more about these benefits. Now, moving on to the challenge topics. Basically, we're looking for ideas that benefit human life in space and through space. So as you can see, there are 2 main domains under our challenge topic. The first one is the space exploration domain, where we look for ideas that support human life in space. As for the second domain, space utilization, we are looking for ideas that utilize the space environment to bring back the benefit down to Earth, specifically in solving Earth-based healthcare problems. Now, going back to the first domain, we have 4 subdomains under it. And the first, space healthcare research, is actually the only research topic for this challenge, where we cover the prioritized space health hazards identified by NASA HRP, such as bone mass degradation and SANS. And we also have the space healthcare journey. So the subdomains following after are all for startup applicants. So the second subdomain would be the space healthcare journey, where we look at startups working on healthcare technologies that protect, monitor, diagnose, and cure human life in space. So astronauts in space, and such as like cardiac monitoring devices and in-space surgical devices. So we have that. And the third subdomain would be the in-space lifestyle, where we really look at technologies that flourish human stay in space, such as in-space entertainment, such as like in-space musical instrument, and we have space habitat temperature management system. And the last subdomain for the space exploration sector would be the data and analytics, where we look for software and hardware startups that collect, store, and analyze data to help astronauts make smart decisions in space. Now, moving on to the second domain, which is the space utilization, composed of solutions that leverage the space environment to solve Earth-based healthcare problems. And there are 3 subdomains under it. The first one, bio R&D platform, refers to technologies that aid life science experiments in space, such as cell culture platform or organ on a chip. And the second subdomain would be the molecule and therapeutics. So these are experiments and manufacturing of therapeutics and biomaterials in space, such as regenerative medicine. And the last one would be the biomedical equipment, or medical equipment that is expected to tremendously gain or improve through in-space experiments. So to further elaborate, and you can find more of these specific examples and detailed descriptions in our website. So www.careinspace.com. And to further elaborate on these topics, our wonderful guest speaker will take over. Please join with me in welcoming our first esteemed speaker, Ariel Ekblaw, founder and CEO of Aurelia Institute, who will challenge our thinking and ignite our passion for the space exploration topic.
Betty, thank you so much for having me. Aurelia is really delighted to be partnering with both Axiom and Boryung for what is, as Betty has shared, the second year of a Care in Space initiative, this year termed Humans in Space. And of course, as many of us in the space industry point our sights out to the moon and Mars, supporting deep space missions, there is such a need for space startups and research in this domain, particularly for humans in space, healthcare, lifestyle, utilization of space platforms for Earth. I'll take you through today a little bit of the ecosystem and how you should think about framing your projects within this industry. Of course, we hope to welcome and invite people deeply steeped in space, but then also maybe those of you who are expertise in healthcare and are bringing that expertise into the space industry. For a little bit of context setting, many of you will know, but maybe not everyone, that we have a rush of commercial space stations coming up in the next few years who will supplement the history of the International Space Station. Of course, the Axiom space station, a great topic today, is one of those. We are, of course, also headed back to the moon, so context for the space industry overall. Keep in mind the ways in which your products or companies or research for this challenge might be able to contribute to the NASA Artemis program. And more broadly, a sustainable lunar settlement on the moon, which is something that many countries are working on, including the US, in this next decade, very seriously. And then, of course, pushing out to a future where we would be able to support a human outpost or even life on Mars or deeper in space. To be able to do this, I'll tell you a little bit more now how we have approached some of this lifestyle and empowering day-to-day life in space design at the two organizations that I have run. The first is the MIT Space Exploration Initiative, where we like to say we are designing, prototyping, and building the artifacts of our space future. So if you look at this space habitat, and when you think about how you might apply to this challenge, we are inviting people to envision a life worth living in space. Beyond the basic elements of survival, the ECLIS environmental control life support systems, the radiation protection, the shell of the habitat, what are the products, the tools, the experiences that would be able to really empower the human occupants in this future of space habitation? So it might be everything from mental health and wellness to agriculture and botany and biophilia to 3D printing that enables dynamic access to tools and being able to fix and have agency over your space structure. There's really a rich wealth of opportunity here. I'm going to briefly show you some examples to get hopefully the creative juices flowing. So we like to say that we are training the space generation at the MIT Space Exploration Initiative and also at Aurelia, where I am the CEO and founder. We charter zero gravity flights every year to test out artifacts and ideas and research for this lifestyle theme in space. Here's a photo of us working with Katie Coleman and a student at MIT in this zero gravity test environment. And I'll show two slides now that give a nice sense of the panoply of options here. So many of you will already have work that you're leading in your own companies or maybe in your own research labs, but just to give you a sense of the breadth of what can fall into space lifestyle. We're thinking about everything from swarm robotics, soft robotics, fashion, and the future of intravehicular activity spacesuits, IVA spacesuits, zero gravity 3D printing, virtual reality and augmented reality is a really rich domain for insight here and for exploration. Music and the arts. There is a need, a really deep human need to have cultural artifacts brought on these long, deep space missions. And of course, then also day-to-day human healthcare needs like space food. How can we think about the future of fermentation in space? Maybe branching out beyond the traditional ways in which we think about, food or healthcare or exercise in space. And so here you see some other examples. Both of these slides are all projects that we have developed within the MIT lab and are great examples of what this challenge is hoping to support around a broader community and through the prize purse at the end of the symposium. From here, you might be wondering, through the Humans in Space Challenge, how will you get from the challenge concept, winning with a really great idea, into the space environment? So there are many different opportunities now to be able to beta test, prototype, particularly hardware artifacts. Software programs for space do not always need the same physical in situ testing, but this roadmap from parabolic flights to suborbital research platforms to the International Space Station, integrated with Axiom and fantastic partners. We're really proud to say that we have flown on 2 Axiom flights, AX1 and AX2, and can speak to the company's wonderful success of integrating experiments on orbit, which is again part of the reward and the award for humans in space. And then finally, even setting your eyes on the moon. Now with programs like NASA CLIPS, there are really fantastic opportunities for you to use this challenge as a jumping off point for this roadmap to really test and deploy your work in the space environment. And I'll close now just with a final slide or two about the notion of Aurelia Institute, how we as Aurelia are supporting the Humans in Space Challenge. We really do believe it's time for a real-life Starfleet Academy. And so through the challenge, you'll also get a chance to work with our team, through judging, through support, and we look forward to getting to know the many different companies as they interact with Aurelia, Axiom, and Boreyoung. Aurelia is a space habitat R&D organization. So we specialize in creating and designing the next generation habitat technology, hopefully to be featured on a future Axiom space station or future commercial space station, where we can build modules and habitats that are self-assembling, origami inspired, and much bigger than our biggest rocket payload fairings. Part of that is to enable all of you, people who participate in the challenge, to be able to have more volume, more infrastructure in space in the future, to be able to deploy all of these different visions for what a compelling life in space would look like. And with that, I'll close with just a fun few images here of some of what we're thinking about for life in space and habitats, hopefully to inspire your own designs and your own submissions to the challenge. And of course, we're happy to have you reach out, ask us questions, and we look forward to getting to know many more of you through the challenge. Thank you so much. And back over to Betty.
So
okay, thank you very much.
Is that correct, Betty?
That's right. Thank you, Dr. Lucie.
Thank you. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I'm Lucie Low. I'm Chief Scientist for Microgravity Research here at Axiom Space, where we're delighted to be involved in the Humans in Space Challenge with our partners at Boreyoung and the Aurelia Institute this year. So I don't think I need to tell all of you who are applying for this opportunity the importance of doing research in microgravity, but I thought I'd just reiterate it quickly. So as you all understand, the absence of gravity allows some really unique insight into the very fundamental processes that drive our understanding of our world, our technology, and life itself. And so curiosity-driven research really is the building block, the very first step in the pipeline for scientific and technical development, manufacturing, and later on commercialization. And so just to link this back to the Humans in Space Challenge here, so some of the biggest challenges that we face on Earth, for example, limited resources, keeping an increasing and aging population healthy, are very similar as to those that we see in space. The challenge is just much more acute in microgravity, which is why the Humans in Space Challenge is such a unique opportunity to try and address some of these challenges. And we see at Axiom that doing research in space advances healthcare and technology for applications on Earth as well as in space. So as Betty was referring to some of those different areas that people are invited to apply to, then we see great value in all of those areas. So obviously there are lots of different places that you could look at in terms of biological sciences that would address some of those areas that Betty referred to, including everything from cell culture studies, looking at different model organisms, maybe not plants so much for this particular challenge, but certainly any kind of human research, which I'll talk more about in just a second, would be very applicable to understand some of the challenges that humans in space face, and so how we can try and address some of those challenges to keep future astronauts healthy, as well as translate those research findings back into benefit here on Earth. So as many of you know, The changes that happen to the human body when it goes into microgravity can be quite interesting and quite unusual, but they can also look very similar to various different clinical issues back here down on Earth. So, for example, the muscle wasting that astronauts see is very similar to age-related sarcopenia. The very rapid bone density loss that can be seen in microgravity can be very similar to osteoporosis. And there can also be a lot of fluid shifts seen in the human body that look very similar to various different kinds of cardiovascular disease and impacts back here on Earth. Now, not just that, but the challenge of living and working in space provides a really unique environment for the study of human health and performance in this environment. So the examples I have look at things like isolation, confinement, distance from loved ones. Now, these are all very relevant for astronaut health, especially for long-term crewed missions, but they're very relevant stresses for aging populations here on Earth. So again, we like to think at Axiom about how the research in space can translate into healthcare benefits here on Earth. So I have a short case study that I'd like to present, which actually was mentioned in one of Betty's focus areas, which was actually looking at tissue chips in space. And so there was actually a program that was run a few years back and has recently ended between the National Institutes of Health here in the US, the NIH, and NASA, along with the ISS National Laboratory, where they actually sent these organs on chips or tissue chips up to the space station. And so for those who are not familiar with organs on chips, these are small bioengineered devices that can contain human cells and tissues and can model human tissues in more relevant ways than many existing cell culture and animal models. And this is really interesting because tying this in with the fact that these physiological changes that occur in the human in space seem to mimic some of these disease-like states on Earth, meant that the investigators that were involved in this program were able to model diseases and monitor progression of these diseases in space over just a few days to a short number of weeks, instead of the months or years that these kinds of changes in physiology might take here on Earth to be seen. So another advantage of this particular program as a case study was that it enabled novel mechanisms or therapeutics, novel mechanisms or pathways to be identified so that drugs and therapeutics were able to be tested very quickly with direct clinical relevance for what was relevant here on Earth. So testing of drugs on Earth was a great way to show how quickly these clinical effects might be able to be seen in humans back on Earth. What's relevant for the Humans in Space challenge here is that this also provided opportunities for personalized medicine interventions. If you think about the opportunity, for example, for astronauts on chip, by using stem cells derived from flight crew themselves, you have the opportunity to actually understand how that individual's physiology might change in response to microgravity and how particular countermeasures or medications might be most effective for those crew members as they experience some of these physiological challenges and that long-term exposure to microgravity that we've talked about. Not only that, the advancement of this kind of program actually enabled technology development to really push forward the advancement of the organ-on-chip technology back here on Earth as well. So I thought that was a very nice case study to illustrate many examples of where opportunities exist with the Humans in Space challenge to model human diseases or aging-like states in space, but then translate those findings back to clinical impact here on Earth as well. So with that, I'll end. I'd like to give a big round of applause as we introduce our next speaker, Dr. Mathias Basner, Professor of Psychiatry at the University of Pennsylvania, who will tell us about his unique experiences of in-space research and experiments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lucy. And thank you for having me both as a judge on this competition and inviting me to this live stream. I consider myself lucky having been an investigator both on the Axiom 1 and Axiom 2 flight. Obviously, commercial spaceflight is a great opportunity to gather lots of data and a lot of astronauts in a very short period of time, and also in people who are not as highly trained and as highly selected as professional astronauts, and that's likely going to be the future flying population. Now, I myself am very interested in how cognitive performance and physiology changes in the crew once it is exposed to a spaceflight environment. So for that, we try to use really brief cognitive tests. Actually, we are using the cognition test battery that we previously developed for NASA, which is a battery consisting of 10 very short neuropsychological tests that cover a range of cognitive domains. And as you can see on the right side of this slide here, the cerebral representation of each of the tests has been previously established with functional neuroimaging. And also we have the crew wear typically a Garmin smartwatch that is commercially available, as well as a so-called BioButton from the company BioIntelliSense. That's a single electrode button that measures a number of physiological signals. So again, the idea is that we do this as unobtrusively as possible, but that we get lots of very good information on how the crew physiology changes and how crew cognitive performance is affected by the spaceflight environment. As you know, it was mentioned before, spaceflight is a very stressful environment with lots of environmental, operational and psychological stresses that can all affect crew physiology and crew cognitive performance. And again, you know, there's multiple investigators typically on flights looking at all kinds of aspects of astronaut behavioral health. And the great thing is that a lot of these data streams can be combined, and you get some added benefits by combining these data. So thank you for listening to my very brief presentation. And now I'll hand it actually back over to the folks at Boryung to tell you a little more about the application process and the overall timeline of the Humans in Space challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Basner, for sharing about your AX2 mission research. And we are again very honored to have you as one of our challenge evaluators. So now moving on to the application process. First, prior to, these are the steps that we recommend you to take. So first, prior to initiating the application process, it is strongly advised that applicants carefully review the information provided on the Humans in Space website. This website includes information on our mission, the cohort from last year's challenge, and of course, some information about this year's Humans in Space program, including the application eligibility criteria and acceptable topics. Once you have read through the website, click on the Apply Now button to start your application process. This button will lead you to an external link where you will be able to view all the questions and answer them accordingly. The online form also allows you to save your progress and exit if you wish to continue at a later time before the application period ends. However, please be aware that once you submit your application, you will no longer be able to edit your responses. So following the submission, a confirmation email will also be sent to you regarding, and which will contain a copy of your responses. After you submit your application form, the Humans in Space evaluators will review your application, and selected applicants may even be requested to participate in some interviews, but this does not guarantee the applicant's advancement to the next round. The purpose of these interviews is to understand our applicants and their projects in a more deeper manner. And then following the first round of application evaluations, semi-finalists will be selected and will be notified via the email they have entered in the application form. So that is it for the application process. And please stay tuned as I hand it over to David, who will explain the general timeline of our Humans in Space challenge. Hi, David. Could you turn on your mic, please?
Sorry, guys. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. And just a quick reminder, please feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A chat box down below, as we will be answering them at the end of this session. Okay, starting with the timeline, we have some important dates and milestones to share regarding the challenge. First of all, number of applicants have already been submitting their application forms since May 23rd, when the challenge officially launched. Applications will be open until July 28, 11:59 p.m. US Eastern Time. As Hannah explained, though, we have a number of questions and documents that need to be submitted, so I encourage you to get started right away. Applicants may be requested to participate in interviews as part of the selection process. However, it's important to note that an interview does not guarantee advancement to the next round. The purpose of these interviews is for us to get to know who our applicants are and understand what they expect from the Humans in Space program. After reviewing this application forms, we will announce the semifinalists by early August. These semifinalists will then prepare to present at the virtual pitch event to be held around early September, where the applicants proceeding to the final round of the challenge will be selected. These finalists will also be provided the Humans in Space expansion program, in which they will be offered a series of mentorships and workshops from the leading space figures in the space industry. Late October marks the grand finale of the challenge, taking place at the Humans in Space Symposium. Finalists will have the incredible opportunity to present their ideas in front of key figures from the space industry. This prestigious event will also be where the final award recipients are selected. With that said, we're going to move on to the Q&A session of this briefing. If you have any last-minute questions, this is the time to ask. The panelists of this briefing session will do their best to answer questions that you may have about the challenge. Thank you.
Right. Thank you everyone for staying till the last part of this session, which is the live Q&A. So we still have a number of questions coming in, but before that, we have some frequently asked answers to the frequently asked questions here on the screen. So we'll just give you a few seconds to just read it through before we start with answering some of the questions that you have shared with us. So a lot of you guys have been asking if international applicants could apply for the challenge. The short answer is yes. International applicants are fully eligible to apply for this challenge. So whether from US, Korea, or in other countries, feel free to apply. And there are no restrictions based on nationality. Okay. So I'll move on to the questions asked through the chat box. The first question is about the eligibility of the, eligibility of the challenge. For the researchers, we'll be accepting applications from graduate student and above with a university affiliation. As for the startups, we're looking for early stage startups with a working prototype. So, and the next question is, we have, what do you look for when assessing applicants? So for startups, I guess the two main factors that we look for are its impact in space and the commerciality. So for the commerciality, it's going to be mainly on readiness for investment and regarding the business model and the revenue channel. But another big factor that we look for is its impact in space. So how much impact or how big of a problem can the solution solve with based on the problems that the astronauts are facing in space and those that utilize a space environment to solve problems on Earth. And as for the researchers, we are looking for very innovative ideas that try to respond to key or prioritize space health hazards identified by NASA HRP. So we're looking at novelty and how feasible your research plan can be implemented. So we'll be also sharing more about the evaluation criteria in detail later on through our website, so please stay tuned. Next, we have a very interesting question. Can we take a tank of water and try zero gravity submerged swimming for astronauts? What about zero gravity sports to keep muscle density optimized? So for the first question, I think I can ask for help from Dr. Lucie or Ariel to answer these questions. But for the second question, definitely I think zero gravity sports to keep muscle density optimized is one of the topics that could be covered under this challenge, specifically under the space healthcare innovation topic that helps astronauts monitor their health in space.
I'm happy to take a quick stab at the first question. I think overall, we want to welcome a lot of creativity and open-mindedness to the challenge. So in general, we're very happy to have people think of things that have not been done before, particularly for the zero-G swimming. I think when you're a man propose a project, if you're on the research side, you would need to show how that has meaningful research aims. So what are you actually going to be able to study about the astronauts? How is that important for the future of human spaceflight? Or if it's on the company side, is it a viable business model? My intuition for that much water is there might be other really precious uses of water in human spaceflight for a while before we might be able to justify a large pool for something of that sort. But I think you're on the right track around things for exercise, health of the human body in space. So continue to iterate, and we hope you apply to the challenge.
Thank you very much, Ariel. And moving on to the next question. If we have a technology that applies to both space flight and Earth health, can we apply to both programs, or do we have to pick one? So based on my understanding, I think both space flight and Earth health fall under the startup application, which means that you would only have to pick one and apply with just one submission. But in terms of the category that you fall under, I think you should choose the one that has the greater share of your business model or your solution. Then, so the next question is, how many teams will make it to each round? So we have around 3 rounds of evaluation. The first one would be the one happening right now on a rolling basis until early August, where we select the semi-finalist. Although we don't set a specific number, we do have given that we are selecting around up to 10 awardees for the startups and up to 7 awardees for the researchers. We're looking around 20 to 30 semi-finalists for startups, and for researchers around similar within that range. And then after the semi-finalist selection, we do have a virtual finalist selection, just like a virtual Zoom-based pitch day, where we do a 1-day live evaluation together with our partners. And after the evaluation, the number of finalists to be selected would be less than what would be within the semi-finalists, around 15 to 20, and researchers within the 15 number range as well. But again, we do not set a specific number of a specific number for the selected semi-finalist or finalist, but we do have a maximum number for the selected awardees at the end of the challenge. And the next question would be, for the startups, do we need to present a functional prototype? Yes, for the startups, we are looking for early stage startups with a functional prototype, but it does not have to have all the functions that you have promised. We just need to see some of its applications so that we can better help you and match you to the appropriate experts to help you expand within the space industry. Okay, for the interest of time, we're just going to have around 1 to 2 more questions coming in. And so the next question is, if a startup company's technology is still in the research phase, would the company be eligible to apply? So for the startup application, the eligibility is to have a prototype. So we would need the team to present us a prototype. And in order for us to execute the investment, we would need a official corporation to be able to send out the investment. So I guess that would be the answer to the question. Yeah. So that was the last question for today's live Q&A session. And if you have any remaining questions, feel free to send them over at careinspace@boryung.com. So that's CAREINSPACE@boryung.com. And we also have an in-depth explanation of the challenge topics in our website, www.careinspace.com. To keep posted on our upcoming announcements, we highly encourage you to follow our social handles in LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So with that said, we thank you very much for attending today's briefing session, and we look forward to meeting all of you at the challenge. Thank you.